everybody, this is Emily Covington with Wagster's Photography. We had some people interested in getting a tutorial video on how I did the cloud kitties pictures, and I wanted to kind of show you guys how I did all of that. So as far as materials to start out with, you're going to need a table. If you're doing kittens, I've done it with dogs and had them on the floor. You just need a lot more of the materials, enough to cover a larger space. You could also, if you're doing puppies, a table would be good too. You're going to need some cotton. You can get some from Joann's fabric store, but you can also go to the thrift store and just get some pillows and rip them open and just use that, because that's going to honestly be a lot cheaper than going to Joann's and getting the new stuff. The only gamble that you're running into is the inside of this pillow actually going to be white. One of mine turned out being green, so it's just a gamble, but it'll save you money if it does end up being white. The other thing that you're going to need is the curtain lights. So the curtain lights, I would prefer ones that are clear, that have clear wires or white wires to blend. You just want them to kind of blend in so they don't stand out. As far as how to set up your setup, so you're going to want your table to be pulled back pretty far. That way you have a gradual slope on the back, because the more gradual your slope is, the better it's going to not, your cotton's not going to fall down while you're shooting. When I set this up, I actually got the cotton and stuck it through the lights, and that's what is adhering it. Nothing is glued, everything's just laid on there. So that's a little trick that it helps things from falling down. And you don't have to, depending on how big of an animal you're doing, you don't have to make it go all the way up to the top. You really only need it enough to where it'll go up to the top of the animal's head, from where you are down here when you're shooting. So as far as the light in the room, some people ask, did you use flash? Did you have lights? So I didn't use any lights at all. I didn't use flash. I didn't use continuous lighting or studio lighting or anything like that. I had the room light on, and I had an open window where light was coming through. So if you do use a flash or use those other things, it's going to overpower the ambient light that you get from your cloud, and it just won't have that same warm fuzzy look to it. So I would suggest, don't turn the lights off, but just don't use studio lights. So as far as your settings that you're using for these, I shot mine on shutter speed 1/160, aperture at f1.8, just the lowest that your lens will go. And then my ISO, it depends on how much light you have naturally in the room. So when I was shooting at the cat shelter, I was shooting at an ISO of 1000 because I had less light, versus in here, this is my home studio, so I've got, brighter lights, and so I could shoot at an ISO as low as 640. The lower your ISO, the less noise you're going to have, and the sharper your images can be. So you want to try to keep it as low as you can. The most important setting for this is your shutter speed. You want to shoot the lowest shutter speed that you can without getting motion blur. So the reason for that is that you're shooting LED lights. LED lights actually are not constantly on. They actually flicker at a rate faster than what the human eye can see. But your camera can see it when you're taking pictures. So my biggest suggestion for these pictures is to, ideally, they say when you're shooting LED lights that you should be shooting at a shutter speed at 1/60. Well, we can't shoot that slow because we're shooting moving animals, and we can't really use a tripod and all of that. So we're compensating by doing 1/160. Most important thing that I can recommend is shoot in continuous. So shoot in, depending on whatever camera manufacturer you have, shoot in the setting where if you hold down the shutter, your camera is going to take picture after picture after picture within that time frame. And the reason for that is because we're shooting at a faster shutter speed, we're going to want to be able to catch all of those lights, as many of those lights being turned on at one time. And I'll show you here, you can kind of see where in some of the photos you've got more light than others, and if you're not shooting in continuous, you might miss that fraction of a second where all of those lights, you're lighting a spot on, versus if you were not, you might miss those opportunities. So I always recommend shooting on continuous for this. And so that's pretty much everything that you really need to know to be able to do this. And, you know, my suggestion is to throw your own style into it. You know, do it your way. You can use different colored lights. These are yellow lights. I really wanted to do blue, but I didn't have any blue. So if you want to do, you know, yellow mixed with blue, or you want to do colored Christmas lights, I'd really like to see what you guys can do with that to try to, you know, spiff it up a bit and make it fun. You know, you could do blue lights and try to make it like a stormy, cloudy kind of thing rather than like a sweet, angelic kind of feel. When you're editing, I would recommend just, you know, if you're editing in Lightroom, just do some brushes over the face just to try to, you know, even out the lighting, because you're not using studio lights, so you are going to have some spots that are not evenly lit because the only thing you're using to light the animal is really the light that's coming up from below. So lighting up that face a little bit better is probably most of the editing that you're going to have to do. So, you know, go out and try it, and I'm excited to see what everybody can create.